All right, so today we would like to welcome Jay Davis, who is the band director at Houston County High School, to talk to us about programming for concert and contest. In addition to having consistently superior rated marching and concert groups at all levels, Mr. Davis's Wind Symphony was also selected to play at the GMEA in-service conference this January. All right, Mr. Davis.
All right, good morning. Thank you for the hand claps. Like she said, I'm band director at Houston County, finishing up my 8th year there. This will be the end of my 21st year of teaching. For those of you who are not that far along in your career, it goes fast. So let me just tell you that. What I've realized is there's a lot more music that I want to do than I have time to do in the amount of career I have left. So basically what I want to talk to you today about is just my thoughts on how to program for your bands, for your ensembles. A lot of this is going to be geared towards band, but you can take it and apply it to whatever you're teaching, whether you're an elementary music teacher or a choral teacher. A lot of these ideas are transferable to whatever it is that you do every day in your classroom. But these are just some thoughts that I've had over the 21 years I've been teaching. It's like I tell people who ask for advice and things, this is what has worked for me. Your mileage is going to be different than mine. Whatever works for you works for you. But these are some thoughts that I've had throughout my own teaching, but also being an adjudicator for LGP and different things, and being a state evaluator for both marching and concert things. These are just some things that I've noticed as I judge that I think would be beneficial to you guys, and hopefully keep us from making some of the same mistakes that I've seen and heard and that I've made myself. And I'm going to talk about those today too. So at any rate, thank you guys for being here this morning. I know it's a lot of work to give up a Saturday unless you're coming back from a cruise, which, that's good too. So here we go. So first of all, I always want to start with the why. If you know why you're doing something, you will be more successful with what you're doing. So for me, literature selection is everything, whether that is for your fall concert, your marching program, your elementary musical. You got to make sure that you are picking things that are going to be appropriate for your students at whatever level they are, but also give them things that are going to maybe push them and push their technique, push their abilities a little further. And there are times and places for all of those things. We're going to talk about that today. But literature is our curriculum. This is what we teach our kids, and we use it to teach not only music to them, but we use it as the gateway to teach fundamentals. We use it as the gateway to teach technique, tone, all of those things all those boxes we have to check every day as far as what we're doing with our ensembles. So picking the right music can either be your greatest success or cause your greatest failures. So we have to be really, really intentional with what we feed our students, and what we give them to work on, and what we give them to use to develop their skills. Like I said, ultimately our successes and failures are linked to what we give them. So we have to be really mindful of that. One thing I want to say as we go through this today, this is not a lecture. I want discussion. So if you have questions or want to talk, or want your cat to climb on your shoulder, just throw something out there. This is the way that I learned to be a better band director, was through conversations with people who knew a lot more than I did. So I want this to be more like a virtual sitting around a table at a Mexican restaurant rather than me just throwing a bunch of stuff at you guys. Are we cool with that? Right. Okay. Most importantly with the why is that it's not about us. The literature that we select is not a trophy that we can show off to other people. Because I've judged a lot of groups who think that they're going to get credit because they play X piece because the title sounds impressive, and then they sound like crap when they do it, and they get 4s and 5s in their evaluation. You don't get street cred because you program Lincolnshire Posey with a grade 3 band. That doesn't help anybody. So you have to take your ego out of all of this and program, unless you play Sweeney, the transcriptions. Okay, pipe down. So, at any rate, But it's really important that we separate our ego from what we know to be best practices for our students and for our kids that we're teaching. And a lot of directors sometimes have a hard time doing that. They go to LGP, they go to an adjudicated like Six Flags festival and they get rocked and they're like, "Well, we played this music. Well, did you play that music well? Was that music appropriate to your ensemble?" So that's the why. Um, Going into the what, I am a very fundamentals driven director. If you walk into my classroom, and I'll say this two ways. I have taught, I mean, obviously, Houston County is a very well established band program. We have a lot of great things going for us. I have four fully instrumented concert ensembles, which is not the norm, and I get that. But I've also taught private school where I had 18 kids in the band that couldn't play the first five notes of the B flat scale. So I think I've done a lot of everything and at every level, and all of the success that I've had as a director, and basically all of the success that the really great directors I've talked to have had, boiled down to how much time they spend daily on fundamentals and the things that make us better musicians. And that has been something that I have really, really taken to heart in my own teaching. If you walk into any of my ensembles, whether it be my wind symphony or my concert band too, every day we're spending 20 minutes on fundamentals out of a 50-minute class period. It doesn't matter if it's spring, it doesn't matter if it's the first day of fall. If you're teaching chorus, you have warm-ups that you do to develop tone, to develop vowel sounds, to develop diction. Those things are non-negotiables as far as I'm concerned. I think one of the reasons that my ensembles sound good is because I don't treat concert two any differently from a fundamental standpoint than I treat wind symphony. And so that does two things. We have a unified concept of what our band sound is going to be, but we also are building so that those skills develop and they move like stair steps into other ensembles if they're willing to put in the work. So the fundamental um, part of it is huge for me. So as far as fundamentals go, from a band side, we work tone, we work articulation, we work phrasing, we work breathing every day. Most ensemble rehearsals start with 2 or 3 minutes of just inhale, exhale exercises to open up, making sure that we're not having a closed throat, making sure that we're just learning how to pressurize that airstream so that we can produce the most quality sound possible. A lot of groups that I listen to at LGPE have not taught their groups the correct ways to breathe. These are what, if you are familiar with the name Alfred Watkins, Alfred Watkins is legendary band director from Lasker High School. He's retired. He goes all over the world. He is considered to be one of the best band directors that's ever lived. He calls these his everydays. These are things you have to do every day. So the way I structure my warm-ups, um, I don't really, I'm not really so concerned about the literature component as making sure within a 5 day class period, I think about my own like private instruction that I got as a trumpet player. Um, you know, every day I would work on tonguing, I would work on range development, I would work on tone, I would work on all of these concepts. So over 5 days in a class, I make sure that I hit all of those things that I would do in a private lesson with all of my ensembles. Because my kids don't take lessons. I have a few that do. My program has over 300 in it. I probably have 20 kids out of that are taking lessons outside of the band room. So I have to make sure that I'm giving those kids the skills that they would get in a lesson through my own fundamental teaching. The best way to do that is to have some kind of a method book that you use. And forgive me if you're elementary music, I'm not entirely sure what the best things are for there, but you can adapt. You know that they've got to learn how to produce tone. They've got to learn while they're running around crazy all over the universe, with the movement and all of that stuff. Um, get Dr. Holmes Davis to tell you about my first teaching job. I taught elementary music. Oh my gosh, it was horrible, and I was so bad at it. It was like the worst thing I could have ever done. But sometimes you got to have paycheck too. So later, I got a lot to get through. So the other thing that I use my warm ups on is making sure that you're preparing them for the lit that you want to do. For example, I played a piece at GMEA with my wind symphony that required a lot of multiple tonguing, a lot of double tonguing and triple tonguing. And I knew that I wanted to do that piece in August. So we started adding that into our daily warm ups so that when we got into that lit, they had already developed the skill and were comfortable with it and then could apply that to what they were doing. Another perfect example, um, within your warm ups, we like our warm ups to sound good. Would we agree with that statement? But if your warm ups sound great all the time, then your kids aren't getting better. A perfect example would be, for instance, my clarinets. Early in my teaching, um, and later in my teaching, I couldn't figure out why my clarinets didn't sound great in the upper register of their instrument. And I had a band director whom I respect very much so say, well, did they ever play in that register outside of the music? No. Why not? Well, I don't know. So then I started, I don't know. I was like, but then I started having my ensembles as part of their fundamentals warm up in those extreme registers. And it sounds like cats clawing on a wall for a while. But if they don't put the work in and you don't give them the time to explore that and develop that tone and develop the understanding of what they have to do with their embouchure, what they have to do with their airstream, and all of those things, then they can apply. And this is for any instrument. I use clarinet as an example because that was the one that really hit home. But like, they don't know how to do it when you give them a piece of music that has those demands in it. So like we use the foundations book a lot. If you're a band person, you're familiar with it. All of those exercises are written in 2 octaves. You got the low stuff, which sounds great, and then it puts it in the upper range. Well, we always warm up in the upper range at least 3 4 times a week because they've got to get comfortable playing in that range. They've got to get comfortable playing in tune in that range. They've got to understand what the differences with the airstream are. And these are the kind of things we look at when we're looking at our fundamentals training. These are the kind of things that we think about, or that I think about rather, that makes my life a lot easier later because I'm doing the hard work up front. Is it going to sound great? No, especially with your lower level ensembles. But they've got to get that exposure and they've got to learn how to be more comfortable doing that. So that when we're playing a piece that requires, extreme register things in our upper woodwinds or our upper brass, they're comfortable doing that. The same as the opposite when you think about your low brass, they need to be comfortable articulating and sounding good in the lower ranges, which gets real tubby and gets real muddy because their tongue doesn't know what to do with the tongue level. So we put all of those things, we add all of those things to our warm ups to make sure that we are comfortable in what we're doing when we give them the literature that we want to perform. So, um, you can probably I'm really big on like fundamental stuff because I think that a lot of people miss the boat on that and they wonder why their ensembles, whether it's a choral ensemble, whether it's an instrumental ensemble, whatever, they wonder why it doesn't sound good. Well, what work have you done up front to make sure that the lit they're getting is achievable for them at whatever level they're at? So any questions about that aspect of what we're doing? Everybody cool? Am I good? Awesome. So the next on the thing says quality lit most of the time. Okay. I will be the first to tell you that you don't have to program every great piece of band music or choral music or whatever you want. You have to play stuff that's going to be accessible for your kids that they're going to enjoy. Because a lot of us, like I said, we don't take our ego out of it. And so we program all this music and our kids just hate it. They don't enjoy playing it. And so what would if you were in an ensemble that played a bunch of music that you hated all the time, would you stay in it? No.
No.
You'd find a different ensemble, right? And your kids are the same way. So you have to throw them a bone every once in a while. And the way that I approach that from for years and years is that I trick them. I lie to kids. I'll just be the first to say it. I lie to my students. I pick 5 or 6 pieces that I know that they can play well and that are achievable for them. And then I let them pick the one that they want to play out of those. So it's the illusion of choice. They think they're getting a choice, but they're not really getting a choice because I already know that the lit that I'm going to give them is going to be something they're going to play well, regardless of what they think. And they're like, oh my God, we love this. And they're like, yeah, I know. You got it. So um, that doesn't mean that you don't program quality lit. because your kids need to be fed. You can't eat cotton candy all the time. Sometimes you got to eat your veggies, and that's what the quality lit. If you think about it in that respect, you have to think about it in terms of what are we actually feeding the kids. And sometimes you just eat dessert for dinner, and it's okay. A Dairy Queen Blizzard for dinner is fine. And then the next day you catch back up with rutabagas and beets or whatever. So just make sure that you're thinking about that. Artistic quality versus teaching tools. There is merit in everything that we program. So every piece that you play, regardless of the difficulty level, regardless of whether or not you're playing the suite from Guardians of the Galaxy or you're playing Shostakovich 5, there's teaching things in all of those pieces. And so you have to make sure that you're approaching it from that standpoint, not that it just sounds cool, but what are our kids going to learn, and are they going to grow through this process? Because we spend months on music, which probably is not the best thing either, but we'll talk about that later. Again, love meat and potatoes, but sometimes you want dessert too. Before you can start actually choosing lit, you have to know your ensemble, you have to know your group, and you have to know its strengths and weaknesses. It drives me nuts, and I have dear friends that I will not name that do not agree with me on this, and I respect them hugely as a director, but they've got like their next 3 years concert cycles already picked out. And I'm like, well, what happens if your tuba player moves? What happens if these kids decide that they want to take 7 APs instead of taking your ensemble class, and that was your Haas trumpet soloist or whatever. I don't pick any lit for the year until they're in the room, and I spend that first month of school evaluating what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. And I have lists of music. I have 50 different lists on my phone. If I hear a piece that I think I might want to do, I'll throw it on the list so I don't forget it. But then I start piecing those pieces of the puzzle together. Okay, I've got really great low brass. I've got an okay flute section this year. 3 of my clarinet players didn't show up. So what are we gonna? How does that puzzle fit together? And how do we really start figuring out what's going to be the best fit for the groups that I'm in front of? Another analogy that I like to use a lot is you can't give a calculus level piece to a group that's only in algebra 1. You got to make sure that you're thinking about it. And I think about my ensembles in terms of academic classes. My concert 2 group is like an algebra 1 class, and I put the kids in there that are at that level and skill level of ability. My concert 1 is like geometry, concert 2 is like trig, and my wind symphony is like a calculus class. You wouldn't put a freshman who can't play 5 notes of the B flat scale in calculus. You wouldn't put a kid who can't add 4 and 4 together in a calculus class. So that's knowing your ensemble. That's knowing what the strengths are of your ensemble. That's knowing the weaknesses of your ensemble. And that leads to better choices on your end as the director. Dr. Holmes Davis has her hand up.
Okay, so what he said about the way he programs is almost accurate. In truth, he spends months putting together contingencies. And if these people show up, we're going to play these 3 pieces. And if this, we're going to do that. So he's like Bo Sodders. He's got 27 different shows planned, and he's just got to decide which one he's going to do.
But that's what I was meaning with the puzzle pieces. Like, I have ideas every year about what I want to program, but it's a matter of knowing that this group can do that piece or do that cycle of pieces. Tom Brown, who is a retired band director genius in South Georgia, he had 2 groups play at GMEA from Jeff Davis High School, which is in the middle of nowhere, Hazelhurst, Georgia. But he said, don't play them basses if you ain't got them basses. And I think that really covers a multitude of things with your ensemble programming. It's funny, and I mean it's kitschy, but I mean, if you really think about what that sentence says, how many times have you heard groups that just simply programmed wrong for their group? How many times have you done it? I've done it. I've done it more times than I want to admit, but every time that I did it, I learned from it. But the problem is when you pick those pieces, when you ain't got them bases, then your kids ultimately are the ones that are going to suffer because of that. So you have to be really, really diligent in how you choose your lit for your group. Is that what the hand up means? Is that a question? Okay, sorry. Ishmael, do you have a question?
Oh, no, you're fine. Yes. When it comes to programming, and you have all of these different levels of mastery or proficiency in your one class,
Mhm.
are you rehearsing with these? Like, is the rehearsal process happening after school, or is it everyone's doing different things during class?
Well, it just depends on how your schedule is set up. I think it largely depends on when they're meeting. Like, do you have algebra through calculus in one class right now?
Yes. Um,
So,
yeah. Getting to mastery all in one class.
well, and that's the thing. Like, when I taught at the private school, I had one high school band class, and we had 50 kids in it. And that was my entire high school program. And when I got to that, the high school, when I got there were 18 kids in the class, and the seniors who had been in band since fifth grade there at that school could not play the first five notes in whole notes of the B flat scale. So you teach them where they are. And in a situation like that, as bad as it sounds, I would start off teaching to the middle because your advanced kids will help pull your less advanced kids up, but you don't want to lose those kids at the bottom end because you want them to stay in your program. So as I'm looking at the lit, like I may have some kids that could perform grade six. I've got some kids that could perform grade two. I'm probably going to look between grades three and four from the lit and really just focus on that fundamentals time with all of them developing rhythmic acuity, learning how to read, learning how to sing with proper tone, learning how to play with proper tone, characteristic sounds. And then what I learned is by starting in the middle, I didn't lose my advanced kids because I would find other opportunities for them to succeed, be it solo ensemble, be it honor band, be it all state band, whatever. But I didn't lose the bottom kids, and eventually they'll catch up faster than you think, especially if they're surrounded with those kids that are good musical role models, so that the quality of your group over time will slowly start creeping up. So like first LGP I did at a private school with my high school group, we played grade three and we went comments only. Didn't even go for a rating. I just wanted them to hear someone else besides me say the things that I was saying to them every day. And then by the time that I left 5 years later, that concert band of all ninth through 12th graders, they were playing grade six and playing it well because we had taken the time fundamentally and incrementally to get them where they needed to be. The thing that you have to understand in a situation like yours, it's not going to happen fast. And that's okay because how many of those kids are you teaching honestly are going to go into music as a vocation? And that's the thing that I had to think about. Regardless of how many great bands I've had and incredible musicians I've taught, like 1% of those kids have gone on to actually be music majors or music students because they all have other interests. Why are they in your class? They want to make memories. They're not there to make music. They're making memories that they're going to cherish forever. My philosophy on band has changed a lot in 20 years. What I am most concerned with now, and this speaks to teaching those lower kids to get them more comfortable, is I don't care what they do when they go to college. If they play, great. If they don't, great. But 15 years from now, when their little sixth grade kid comes home with that paper to be in band or be in chorus, I want their experience with me to have been such that there's no way in the world they wouldn't have their kids do it when they get to that point. Does that make sense? So to answer your question, I would teach in the middle right now. Give those advanced kids something that they can chew on, maybe a chamber group, maybe a quartet, a girls trio, whatever. Because you teach chorus, right? Okay, so like a quartet, a girls trio, whatever. And then give those other kids mentors, maybe do some pairing with your upper kids to just help them grow. And those kids will come along faster than you think. But it all goes back to what I said. If you're not teaching the fundamentals every day and you're just expecting them to perform lit, they're never going to get there because they don't know how. And my friends, when we talk band a lot, we use the phrase, they don't know what they don't know. Those kids at the bottom end of that mastery level, they don't know that they don't know the stuff. They just know that they like singing, They want to be in chorus and they don't want to suck. And that's basically it at that point. And that's where your job as a programmer is very important. Are you picking lit that's going to raise their level without boring these kids to death? And over time, that level will, it'll grow incrementally. So
Can I interject about the fundamentals? There's a difference between it being able to talk about fundamentals and about able to apply them. So the fact that they can describe diction is a different skill than being able to make the shape of the note.
mm-hmm.
And so when we're doing this stuff, we're not so interested in their verbal ability, we're interested in their musical ability.
And along that same line from what Tina just said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to call her HT. She's my wife. So from what Tina said is, if you talk to if you watch me warm up my group, it's a lot of questioning of them. We'll play a chord. All right, what did you guys hear? Who was the most out of tune on that chord? Because I want them to be able to apply in real time what they're hearing. And they'll be like, tubas. Yep. Okay. So what was the problem? Sax player over here. What was wrong with the tuba sound? I'm making them responsible for the knowledge by asking them those questions to make sure that they're not just going through the motions in the warm up. And that's another thing that I see a lot with band directors is they have their set warm ups they do every day. And while they're doing those warm ups, they're checking roll, they're writing passes, they're doing all this other crap. I am 100% engaged in the warm up. I am walking around the room. I am pointing things out. I'm stopping. If an attack's bad, we stop. We do it again. We talk about why it was bad. We do different kind. I mean, all of that stuff. If you're not engaged in the fundamentals, they won't be engaged in the fundamentals. And you have to make them responsible for that knowledge. Hey, let's play this chord. Okay. Sing the chord. We sing it. Play it again. Okay. Tell me what you heard. Well, this note was out of tune, the balance wasn't good. They can tell you all of those things in concert 2 through Wind Symphony, because I'm engaged in the process with the warm-ups and the fundamentals every day, because they see that I value that time. So they are more engaged and value that time as well, because the directors are, let's play a B flat scale. Okay, get your music out. Well, your kids aren't going to get better doing that, and they're not paying attention to that B flat scale either. You know what I mean? So you have to make the fundamentals time a priority, and that's how you can grow that group of kids who are just not there yet, is making sure everybody is, for chorus, matching syllables, matching diction, keeping a nice open vowel, that kind of stuff, so that they're all getting the training that they need to be more successful as you push that lit. We'll get more into that in a minute. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. So never pick a piece that has ranges you have not heard your kids perform with a good sound. If they're not doing it in the warm-ups and they're not comfortable with it, and you hand them a piece, it's never going to sound better than cat scratching on a wall. There's nothing you can do to teach around that if you haven't given them the prep work in the beginning. The same goes with technique things. If you want to play a piece that has a lot of articulation, a lot of 16th note things, technical things, have you done what they need on the front end for them to be successful on the back end? If you guys are getting the picture that everything we do lit selection is going to start with this fundamental stuff, because nothing you program for your kids is going to be achievable if they don't have the basic skills in place for whatever level that you want them to play at. Does that make sense? Okay. Program for the group that's in front of you and not the group that you hear in your head. This is something that I see a lot as an LGPE judge. When I'm going around the state hearing other ensembles, you can tell that they're hearing something in their head that's different than what's coming at them every day in their rehearsal. And they don't know how to marry those two things together to be able to fix what they hear. So make sure that you have a good concept of sound for what a high school band sounds like, or a high school chorus, or a middle school chorus, or a middle school band. If all you do is listen to recordings of the President's Own, I don't care how good your high school group is, they're never going to sound like the President's Own. So you want to find good high schools that play at the level that you're playing at and listen to their recordings so that you know what a good grade 4 sound is. You know what a good grade 3 sound is. You know what a good grade 6 sound is going to be so that you can attune your ears appropriately to what the ensemble in front of you is giving you. Certainly, it's good to hear those reference recordings of President's Own in North Texas and Michigan State, Northwestern, all these great, phenomenal collegiate groups. The fact of the matter is, no matter how good your group is, you're still dealing with kids that are just not as developed as the musicians they have to work with. You figure North Texas is all doctoral performance majors. The President's Own are the best in the country. So you've got to make sure that you're programming your pieces with the sound of the group that you want to have in your head. And you can find them. YouTube's great. Just look up the piece you're listening to and find a good high school band playing it. And you'll hear a lot of high school, middle school bands sounding like crap playing them too. So you just got to be discerning as you pick through your lit. So, any questions so far? Everybody good? Anybody need potty or water or anything like that? Yes, I just said potty as a 44-year-old. There you go. Carry on. All right. So LGP versus school concerts. Always program for your group to be successful. Generally, that means playing a piece and taking a week or so and letting them hack and frack through it. And then you really have to be the evaluator and decide if this is going to be something that your kids are going to be successful with or not. Because let me tell you, your stakeholders, their parents, they don't care what music you give them. They don't have a clue about what you're programming. They go, that sounded bad. That sounded really great. And those are the two metrics that they have for deciding if you're doing a good job with their kids and if they want their kids to continue in your program. And that's it. There's nothing else. Unless mom and dad were band nerds, choir nerds in high school, college, they don't know. They're not. I mean, you could play Flight of the Thunderbird or you could play Lincolnshire Posey and they're going to be just as impressed if it sounds good. They don't care. So program for success for your kids. Same thing. School administrators, unless they were band people, they don't have a clue. They know, oh, that doesn't sound good, or oh, that sounds great. That's it. Again, the only two metrics that your school admins have. Now, I'm in a situation starting next year where our new head principal marched Redcoats for 4 years. He was a trumpet player in the Redcoats. So it's nice to be able to talk band with an admin because he does understand, what we do and super supportive of it. Which has been the first time in my career this has ever happened. So I'm like, it's a whole new world. I feel like singing Disney. Like it's really going to be awesome for me to have someone who knows a little bit about what we do. As an adjudicator, we love giving ones because it means the kids are being taught, the kids are being taken care of, and the kids are getting what they need and are being fed well every day. We are not out to demolish you or your program. We want to be fair. We want to be realistic. And 9 times out of 10, if a score isn't what you think it should be, it's because you have over-programmed for your ensemble or you have not done the work on the fundamentals to give them the chance to be successful. And that's really what it boils down to. Do not program believing I said this earlier, the title of the work is not going to give you any street cred with a judge, because if they're a good judge, they've already played most of it and they'll see your group, they'll hear your warm-up notes on stage and go, oh my God, why are they playing that? Like we can tell in 10 seconds if you play some stuff on stage, if like you've already given us a glimpse into what's coming. And very rarely are we surprised where the warm-up sounds don't match the concert sounds. So don't try to program things because you think you're going to get the benefit of the doubt. For me, if you play a grade 6, I'm expecting to hear grade 6 played well because you have decided that your group is at the level that can handle this. And to me, if your group's playing grade 6 and they don't play it well, then that means the director has too much of an ego and should have played grade 5 where their kids would have been successful. Does that make sense? Okay. And that's real world bottom line. I'm probably considered a hard judge because of that. But it's one of those things where, again, you have to take your ego out of it and play what your kids can do well. It is okay to have a certain amount of cheese in your school concert programs, because the older I'm getting, the more I'm less concerned about making musicians and the more concerned I am with making memories and making moments happen. So play Guardians of the Galaxy right after you play, the Chester Suite or whatever. It's okay to have cheese. It's okay with everybody leaving feeling good about what they just heard. Does that make sense? So don't be afraid to. Uh, Tina, what was that piece? The one with the pots and pans that your administrators could do. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
The Mackey?
No. There's like stupid pieces like concerto for faculty and band where you can have your principal come up and bang on pots during the piece, that kind of stuff. Sell to your stakeholders. You know, my wind symphony plays really well, and they play a lot of really quality lit, and my parents are like, yeah, the band's really great, but I really love Fly Me to the Moon. Like, we just played all this stupid hard stuff, and this is what you remember from what we just did. They don't care. They just want you to have successful concerts with your kids. And then finally, on the what, use your concerts before LGPE to prepare your students for what you will play at LGPE. And we're going to talk about that in a minute with the concert cycle and stuff. Any questions so far? Ishmael's ordering me lunch. I appreciate that. I want a number 2 with no onions.
Sorry. Thank you.
All right. We'll take about 2 seconds. I'm going to drink a little water, and then we're going to jump into the how. Dr. HD is going to check the laundry, which I should have done yesterday while she was at work. All right, going on to the how. Do your homework on the front end. If you don't know the piece at least enough to know the pitfalls and the strengths and weaknesses, then you don't need to give it to your kids till you do. Okay? Try your best not to sight read a score with the kids. And I know that's hard because of all the extra BS that all of our admins have us doing right now. PLC meetings and all this crap that has nothing to do with having good ensembles. I get it. I do, because I have to do the same crap that y'all do. And in a perfect world, we just get to teach music and they would leave us alone. But it is what it is. But try not to sight read with your kids. Pepper's great because Pepper has a lot of score images that you can use, but at least listen to the piece. If it's got a 42 measure oboe solo and you don't have an oboe player, you probably don't need to do that piece right now. Does that make sense? So just keep those things in mind. What are the instrumental demands? What's your instrumentation in your ensemble? What's your vocal representation? Do you have, are you an SATB? Are you split soprano parts? Can you have 6 parts? Can you have 3 parts? Do you need to be singing in unison? You need to know what your ensemble can handle. And the same thing for band. You need to know your instrumentation. I have a senior oboe player this year who's phenomenal. She doesn't do any of the honor band stuff. She doesn't do any of the all-state stuff, but she sounds like a freaking monster oboe player. So this was the year to play October by Eric Whitaker because she's graduating. I don't have any more oboes in my program. So if I was going to do it, this was the year to do it because I knew what my ensemble. Do you have the right strengths? If you have a massive trumpet solo or you have this giant range thing that's going to happen in the brass, have they been developed to be able to be successful doing that? Okay. Are all the parts covered? There's nothing worse than judging a group, a small group, large group, it doesn't matter if not all of the voices are being heard. If you're playing a piece that's got 3 trombone parts, 4 horn parts, 3 clarinet parts, low reed parts, I want to hear all of those voices. They don't have to be played on that instrument, but I need to hear all of those voices in the chord somewhere in your ensemble. There's a famous story. I started my teaching career in Clayton County Schools. My first job, I was the band director at Lovejoy High School. And I started as the assistant band director, and there was this dude who taught at North Clayton, who did March Slav by Tchaikovsky with 19 kids on stage because he rewrote the crap out of the parts. And I think sometimes we get under the misconception that a judge, that if we're playing a piece, that has to be exactly what's on the page, exactly the way it's written. Look, most judges don't care. They just want to hear it covered, and they want to hear it in tune with good tone. If you have to rewrite, we've all been there. We've all had to rewrite parts. I'll give you a great example. My Wind Symphony this year played at GMA. We did a piece called Vulcan to end their concert because I'm a huge Star Trek nut. Anyway, so the second movement had this really exposed horn thing. And I had like a grade 9 Wind Symphony with a grade 3 horn section this year. So when we got the GMA, the horns looked like they were playing the crap out of it, but it was really my trombone players who were covering the parts there. Did anybody in the audience know? Nope, because I did the rewrite. Would they have known if I hadn't rewritten it? Yes, because it would have sounded like a bag of cats. Okay, so do what's necessary to make your ensemble sound good. Prior to this year, I had a cellist move into our school who was in choir, and he played the cello thing with the choir as a sophomore. And I went up to him after the concert and said, "You're going to be in my Wind Symphony next year." He was amazing. And so I gave him a bassoon part. I didn't have a bassoon player, but now I had that part covered because he could play so well. It's just one of those things that, take Fillmore marches, take Sousa marches. Those were written for bands to play outside. Those were community outside under the gazebo kind of pieces. So all of the woodwind parts, flute and clarinet parts on Sousa and Fillmore marches are stupid high for no good reason other than you wouldn't hear it outside if they weren't there. So now that we're playing these pieces inside, have one person play it where it's written and give everybody else down an octave, because it's going to make your band sound better. The part's covered, it's a thicker, warmer sound, and nobody feels like death because they're hearing the woodwind sound. Okay? So don't be afraid to rewrite a part. If it makes your band sound better, rewrite the parts. It's fine. Chord voicings. Clarinet players never should end anything on a chord voicing on the E on the fourth line or the fourth space in the staff. That note is a crappy note on clarinet. It's bright. It tends to be out of tune. Revoice the clarinets. Revoice the trumpets. If they're ending on that fourth line D natural, which is always flat, give them a different note. But that comes into you knowing what your instrumental tendencies are, to knowing what they need to do to make those things better. Now, sometimes if you're doing your job with the fundamentals, they're aware of those pitch problems and they know how to fix them themselves. But I don't care what you do with the clarinet, that E natural on a final chord and B flat sounds like crap. Take them off that note. Give it to a flute. It sounds much better on flute. Okay. So anyway, rewrite parts. Musical demands. Are they mature enough to handle it? Sometimes kids don't play pieces well. They don't sing pieces well because they just don't understand it. They haven't had enough experience with that level of music to understand what's in front of them, whether it be rhythmic ideas, whether it be the harmonic structure. Last year, my Wind Symphony did the music for all Southeastern whatever. We played the we played the Persichetti Symphony for band. It almost killed all of us because to start with, they didn't understand it. And until we did the work together to kind of build that mutual understanding, it was never going to get played well. But we did a lot of that by listening and discussion and talking through those problems. And given any other group, I probably would have pulled it. But I knew that they could grow to that. But some groups can't. I'll use the piece October by Eric Whitaker. When I was at Lovejoy, I wanted to play this piece so badly I couldn't stand myself. I'd pull it out, we'd read it. It sounded like garbage. I'd take it back up. The next year, I read it again. Sound a little better, still garbage. The third year I read it, they sounded good because we had grown their musical maturity to get to the point where they could program a piece that I wanted them to do. So sometimes you just have to be patient. and let them grow up a little bit to be able to play those pieces because their maturity musically isn't there. Um, you know, if you want to do this piece, is there a piece at a lower level that can prepare them for those challenges? It's kind of a stair step kind of thing. Are we building for transfer? Are we building for to get them to a place where they can do that piece you have in mind that you're dying to do? So what can we teach them? You're not going to play Ives with a band without exposing them to massive dissonance and aleatoric sounds. So you have to do those stair steps in place. And again, have you done the work in the warm up? If you're going to play a lot of dissonant things, you're going to play a lot of diminished chords. Are you doing anything in your warm up to teach them how to tune those dissonant chords? Are you teaching them just playing major chords? In a major chord, you have to lower the third for it to ring in tune. Are you teaching them those things every day? Are they doing those listening exercises? Do they understand in the minor chord that you have to raise the fifth? Do they understand what a minor chord is? So you start with the bottom band and you teach what a minor chord is. And then you start with the next band teaching how to tune that chord. And then by the time they get into the Wind Symphony, they have that understanding in place. So again, like I said, fundamental work all the time. What are we teaching? From a conducting standpoint, do you have the skills necessary to conduct the piece? Can you physically handle conducting the work that's in front of you? Which means you have to practice your conducting and you have to know exactly, like, any transition, any rallentando, any rubatos. You have to know exactly what you want to do so that they don't. Hello, kitty cat. What's your cat's name?
His name is Smokey, and he is really spoiled.
Oh, Smokey just wants to be a good band director. There you go. Love it. So, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like, one of the pieces that comes to mind is the Profanation by Jeremiah by Bernstein. That piece is a conducting nightmare. So are you physically, like, capable of conducting the work, and do you understand the work? When I talk about rehearsal, we'll get into this. I put it on the outline here, but macro, micro, macro. We'll talk about that, what that looks like in our concert ensemble. All right, so that's it for page 1. Are you guys good? I like talking about this stuff. Can you tell?
Yes.
Yeah, this is like my thing. Okay, we're going to try to go to the second page if I can figure out how to change my screen so I can see what's on the second page. All right, here we go. We all think of concerts in terms of the year, right? So for me, I have a winter concert, I have my pre-LGP concert, I have my LGP performance, and then I have my spring concert. Lots of groups will do fall performances. I'm great with that. My marching band is too involved in for me to deal with that at Houston County. We just don't have the time in the schedule, and I probably could, but it's just a choice that I had to make. We're still working concert lit during marching season. I don't believe in a marching season and a concert season. I just believe that I would rather use that fall time rather than cramming a performance into them. I use that time to work on fundamentals. I use that time to evaluate my ensemble. I use that time to figure out exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are. We read a ton of music during that time. But we are working concert music with the top group by the third week of school. With the bottom group by the first, like after Labor Day weekend, we usually start concert music with them because it takes them, the younger groups just take longer to memorize all the marching crap and learn the stands music that they don't know and all that stuff. So you have to know, again, that's knowing your groups, right? Knowing where they are and what they can do. My Wind Symphony, they could play the entire stands book from memory. So we just hit it once, make sure they don't, forget the cuts, and then we keep it moving. But, we don't program a fall program because of that, because I want that time to not be worried about notes and rhythms, and I want that time to develop tone, to develop technique, to develop an idea of an aural center, understanding those pitch tendencies and tuning chords and all of that stuff. That's what I want to use that time for. And you can do that with the marching music. Like I don't teach my marching band any different than I teach my concert bands. Like, I just want them to sound good. period. Now, of course, there are times where a marching band's going to knock a wall down that you won't necessarily do with a concert band. But if the air and the breathing's not there, they can't do that anyway. So everything's going back to those fundamentals. I always advocate starting the concert music as early as you feel comfortable with, but I wouldn't start pieces until I've spent at least 3 or 4 weeks working on just fundamentals. And that's just me. You have to decide what's going to work best for your program, but this is what's worked for me. August, when we start doing the concert stuff, we're looking at, those technical exercises, those technique things, and then we start looking at different pieces and start applying some of that and just seeing where they are. First things first, read a ton. Like I said, reading Concert Lit by September 1. I says advanced groups, really, if I'm being really honest, we're reading Concert Lit with everybody by September 1. And the way that I look at my winter concert, we do some like holiday stuff, but we also do some like legitimate like band stuff, and we'll talk about that. It helps you evaluate where your ensembles are. Give your students a say in what they play. Like I said earlier, lie to them, but like play one for you and play one for them. And the one for you, typically I try to figure out what level I think the group is going to play at LGPE, and I'll give them one on that level. So a perfect example, my concert band won this past year. We went grade 4 for LGPE. And so I read the Carter Overture for Band with them, and we did that in our fall concert, our winter concert. Even though it wasn't Christmassy, it still let me know if they were really good with handling grade 4 stuff. And so it gives me a chance to see, and then program something a little bit easier that they can have fun with. They're not ready for that intense note rhythm beaten into them yet. They've got to grow into that. So, like I said, one for you, one for them. And again, trick them into thinking they have ownership. They will buy into your program much more if they think that they get a say in what's actually going on, when we know that they really don't. Cool? Is everybody good with that? Your fall concert. Program one grade under your previous LGPE. There's great music on all the lists. It's always a good starting point. If you had a grade 6 band, play a grade 5 in the fall concert just to see if you're still close to that. There's so much great music on the list. There's so much. And honestly, I use the list for at least one piece in my fall concert because I want to know, are they capable of handling the technical and musical demands that's going to be required of them after Christmas? Okay. Program one on the level of their previous LG performance. Now, we all know if you're a band person, and forgive me for my choral and elementary folks, I know I'm talking band a lot, but this is what I know. So hopefully some of this will apply. But like as I'm looking at that fall concert program, I'm going to put one piece on the LGP from the same level, but there's such variance within the list. There's easy 5s and there's hard 5s and there's easy 3s and there's hard 3s. Just be judicious in what you program. If you have a grade 6 ensemble, you're probably not going to give them the Hindemith Symphony in the fall concert. Okay. But you could read Abrams Pursuit. You could read grade 5 Urban Dances as an easy grade 5. Those are the kind of things just to see where we are. We're just trying to feel out our groups, feel out what their work ethic's going to look like, feel out what they're going to do and willing to do individually, as well as part of the ensemble. Can they still, the questions that I'm asking during that time as I'm getting ready for that winter concerts, can they still play at that level? Your strengths are going to change year to year. This year I have the most incredible trombone section I'll ever teach. I have 5 trombone players in my wind symphony. They have all made all-state band. They are stupid good. That is not going to be there next year because I have 2 seniors that are graduating. One of them is my daughter. So that trombone section this year, I picked a lot of stuff that had killer trombone stuff because when you got the Ferrari, you kind of want to drive it, and then next year I'll be driving that Lexus SUV again. It'll be fine. But, so your strengths are going to change. Perhaps choose pieces that contain elements that need improvement. Perhaps that, balance was an issue. So maybe I'll program something more lyrical so that we can really talk and focus on what those balance issues are and teach them with an easier difficulty how to hear and address those balance things in real time so that when they're in the performance, you can't stop and tell them, hey, trumpets, you're too loud. They've got to be able to hear that stuff. So program something that's going to address some of the weaknesses that you heard from your LGP performance tapes from the year before. And you can start that right after LGP. That doesn't have to wait, but just something to think about, to reinforce. Typically keep this all legit music unless you're doing like I do. Like if you're not doing if you don't do a fall concert, then you kind of have to split. If you're doing a fall concert, I would do all like legit band music, maybe one fluff piece, like, program some LGP kind of stuff at the various levels you want to try. And then, maybe do Guardians of the Galaxy at the end. So, I keep saying Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know I'm using that piece, but you guys get the idea. Yeah. But at the same time, I advocate for not doing a fall concert because I would rather use that time to work fundamentals. If you have to do a fall concert or you want to, then just make sure you're not sacrificing fundamental training for the sake of doing lit. Does that make sense? Winter concert, again, half concert, half holiday. Push the level further closer to the LGP projections of what you want to really play. Program quality holiday literature or don't. Your parents, again, they don't care. There are good Christmas holiday pieces at every level that you could do. This is one of those places where the cheese factor really, really will buy you friends with your parent groups. There are great arrangements of holiday music. And then you've got something like Alfred Reed's Greensleeves, which would be great for your advanced group. Or, and I'm going to be real honest with you, for you band folks, Sleigh Ride's hard as crap. If you've never programmed Sleigh Ride, it ain't easy. It goes into concert C major in the middle. It's got all kinds of rhythmic and technical demands. So, there's good literature that you can do in your holiday concert. Some years I'll invite our local Santa to come out and he conducts Sleigh Ride. Our local, very nice, Jake. Our local Santa happened to have a degree in music ed. So he comes and conducts every couple of years. One year we did John Moss's The Night Before Christmas, and he narrated it. We had a chair on the stage. We built a fireplace. The cheese factor's there. And then we finished Night Before Christmas, and then right after that played The Nightmare Before Christmas, So, I mean, just keep that in mind. But we also, on that same concert that we did Night Before and Nightmare, we also did our Galante piece, and then we did the Zedeklik Chorale and Shaker Dance. So we're playing good lit and we're playing fun stuff. And that's where you've got to find the balance. And the winter concert's a great place to do that. Everybody cool? All right, pre-LGP, LGP. This is where I say game on. My philosophy, to be honest, on LGP has changed as I've gotten older, especially as I began adjudicating, because I want to make sure that I understand that I thought that the judges were looking to get me early on, and that's not the case. As an adjudicator, I want to point out the things that you're doing well. I want to point out the things that need some attention, and I want to give you suggestions and strategies as much as I can in a 15-minute tape on how to fix those things that I'm hearing. Okay, it's not malicious. I would much rather sit back and go, wow, there's not a whole lot I can say about this. You guys you've handled all of your business. Flutes, check that. C natural and flute's a bad note, so how are we going to fix that note? Or trombones, G flat, where's that fifth position at? Those are things that I point out as I'm listening. This year the things that I heard the most of were bands not understanding that a dot, a dash, a sideways V, and a rooftop V are not the same things. And so what are you doing in your fundamentals to address that? Do they understand the difference between a marcato accent, between the length of an accent? Do they understand the weight of the tongue to play staccato, to play lightly? Do they understand that you have to use soft consonant sounds to play legato instead of hard consonant sounds? Those are the things that, I heard a lot of. The other thing that I heard a lot of was melody being obscured by less important parts, and that would apply to choral music as well. We always have to hear the melody, right? So that's a balance thing that we've got to understand. So make sure you get ears on your group during the process. There are thousands of people in all of our fields that would be happy for you to send a recording to and go, hey, can you listen to this and tell me what you hear? Because you know as well as I do, every day we start hearing mistakes as right when we're living with an ensemble, whether it's elementary music, whether it's, you know, so we all have iPhones or Androids. You can record right there from your podium. Hey, here's 3 minutes of this piece. What do you hear? I highly advocate bringing in clinicians if you can. I have people in my band room all the time. These are people that I trust. These are people who I have heard or know to have really fine ensembles. And I also make sure that I bring them in to not just work with my top group. I bring art conductors in to work with concert 2, to work with concert 1, to work with my second group, to work with my top group, because those kids that are not in the top group, they deserve the same educational opportunities that our advanced kids get. But I know a lot of group directors were like, oh my God, our top group's got to be so good. Yeah, well, you know what? Your bottom group should become your top group at some point. So what are you doing to help them out? You know? So bring in those guest conductors, send those recordings off, send recordings that are horrible to somebody that you trust, because we all have them. We all have those days that the kids just suck and there's no way to get around it. But you record on those days and you send it off, because someone's going to hear something on those recordings that you're not hearing. There are tons of retired band directors, retired choral directors that would love to come spend time in your room. I have found that nothing pleases a retired director more than being asked to come in and work with your kids. Wally Shaw, who was my predecessor at Houston County, he and I talk 5 times a week at least. We had lunch together yesterday. He is one of my dearest friends now, but he's in my band room all the time. Tom Brown is in my band room. I bring in college. Josh Bird from West Georgia has come down to work my group. Jay Wucher, who's in Milledgeville. Chris Schumick from Milton. I mean, all of these guys, Kenny Beard, anybody that I can get to come make me a better director by watching them teach my kids, I want to do that. You know, shameless plug. I'm happy to come work with your kids if you want somebody, by the way, just throw that out there. Retired directors, you can learn from your guest instructors. My favorite thing I've ever learned having a guest conductor was Kenny Beard came down to work with my group a couple of years ago. If you don't know Kenny, he's legend. Incredible with your groups, middle school, high school, it doesn't matter. But he used the term mezzo boring. And I just fell in love with that. You know, we talk about mezzo boring all the time. Don't play mezzo boring, you know. The other thing that I like about having people work with my group is I can hear better when I'm not on the box. When somebody else is working my group, I'm sitting there with a legal pad and I am just making notes of things that I hear that while I'm conducting and managing class that I can't get to. But then I get a to-do list, and what I do with that to-do list is I make Post-it notes and I put it on my score. And when I can take the Post-it note off, I feel like we've checked that box. And I know that I'm ready for LGP when I don't have any Post-it notes left. Does that make sense? Everybody with me so far? Everybody good? Okay. So those are the kind of things that I think about. You know, I want to know that I've addressed everything possible so that when I get to an adjudication situation, there's nothing left for them to say. Okay. As far as programming for LGPE, you should have done the work in the fall to know what music your kids are going to be successful playing. And that comes from all the things that we've talked about prior to now. But I would say that 90% of the LGP scores that I've given that have been unfortunate or surprising for directors is because they didn't realize they had picked the wrong music. Okay. So now I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell you my story of how I picked the wrong music. So when I was at Lovejoy High School, I was an assistant director for 1 year, and then my head director went on to be a principal. And so I'm 23 years old, and I'm handed a program with 275 kids in it and 3 concert bands. I was not ready, number one. So the first year I go to LGP with the top group, we played, I don't even remember the march, but we played An American Elegy by Frank Ticheli, and we played Abram's Pursuit, and we got 1s. And I was like, oh, cool. I got this band director thing figured out. Great. So the next year, we did a 5-6 split. And I remember because I played them basses, which I did not have, harkening back to Tom Brown's quote. We played them basses. We played the Ira Hershen Symphony Movement 2 based on the themes of John Philip Sousa, which is impossibly hard, but if you look at it, it just looks like whole notes and half notes. And then we played Africa Ceremony, Song, and Ritual by Robert Smith. It was the wrong program for my band. I didn't teach it well. I didn't do the prep work that I needed to do in the fall. And we got a 3-3-4 from the judges with my top group at LGP. And I own that junk. And every year I remind myself, because I kept those sheets and I read them again every year to remind myself that what I give the kids to do is the most important part of my job. And that's when I went on my crusade about learning about lit and prep and programming and all of that stuff. Because ultimately that 3-3-4, the only person responsible for that was me. The kids did everything they were taught. They did everything that they were given to them. And ultimately I gave them a plate of food that was just not edible. And we got killed for it. And it happened. And I called my former head director and I said, this happened. And he just asked me one question, and forgive me, she's gone. But he said, did you work your ass off? And then I started making a bunch of excuses. Oh, this happened. No. Did you work your ass off? No. Well, there you go. You get ones at LGP by working your ass off. In the fall, by the prep that you do, by the understanding your ensemble, by knowing your people, knowing your strengths, knowing all the stuff we've talked about so far. That's the working your ass off part that gets you to be able to consistently have bands that achieve at a high level. And I hadn't done that work. And I got obliterated for it. And to be perfectly honest, it was the best thing that ever could have happened to me. And I'm very proud to say that I have only made straight ones since then with every group I've taken to a performance evaluation. Because I learned about me that I wasn't putting the work to make my kids successful. And it wasn't that I was a bad musician. It was just I hadn't done the groundwork in the fall. I hadn't done the groundwork in the fundamentals. I hadn't done the groundwork in the listening. I hadn't done any of the stuff that I know now to do because I didn't do it then. And I needed someone to just completely blow me up and go, hey, this is not good. And this is your fault. And so I went from that. And hopefully my 3-3-4 will serve as a cautionary tale for you guys so you never have to experience that. Because it's not a good feeling. I started wondering if I should go sell cars. Like for real. Like if this was not the career that I should be in. But you learn and you grow from those things. And I don't, at first I tried to be mad at the judges, but the judges just commented and scored what they heard. And they commented and scored what I gave them to hear. And that was on me. So just keep that in mind as you go through your LGPE process, as you're looking at these things and you're thinking through that. What are you doing to make your kids the absolute most successful they can possibly be? Tina, I hope you don't get in trouble. I said the word ass repeatedly in the last few minutes. I'm just throwing that out there. So, all right. So LGP is done now. We've done that part of our year. We have survived. Hopefully we have thrived. Hopefully your kids got some good feedback. Hopefully your kids got good comments. Hopefully you get good comments as an educator that can inform and improve your teaching moving forward. Okay, because that's what the ultimate, at this point, I'm not interested in the ratings anymore. I just want someone to tell me things that make me a better teacher. And so when I'm doing my judges tapes, that's what I try to give. I try to give those things that are going, lessons that I've learned that made me a better teacher that maybe will help someone else be a better teacher. And that's it. So now we're at the spring concert. This is the time to lose your junk completely. Play whatever you want. Push the lower groups beyond what they've done. If you've got a grade 4 band, maybe give them a grade 5 that's on the easier side of grade 5. Let them play fun stuff. And I'll be honest, my Wind Symphony, especially over the last 2 years, we have done a ton of music. I mean, we did 9 pieces for the GMA concert. We did Music for All at the end of last year. We did our LGP program in 5 weeks, and we played October and the finale from Shostakovich's Fifth Symphony in 5 weeks, which I know is stupid, but it's been a lot of music. Spring concert is all Star Wars. We're going to play fun stuff that the kids are going to like. And the thing is, the stuff that we're playing is going to improve their technique. It's going to present some challenges to them, but they come to class, they're loving it. So all of my bands for the spring concert, every band is doing movie tunes. And we picked movie stuff that's going to teach them to things that they didn't do well for LGPE. And we're addressing some of those needs and concerns through this. But at the end of the day, the spring concert for me is about fun. And because we've done the hard work by this point, we want to leave them with a good feeling, so they want to come back the next year. Does that make sense? So, but this is also a chance to try, if you don't want to do something like me with all movies, last year, okay, this is going to be stupid for my band folks. So last year, my Wind Symphony, our spring concert was Armenian Dances Part 1, Elsa, Minimalist Dances, and Conga del Nuevo Fuero. I can't ever say it, the Marquez piece. But that's what they wanted to play. It was stupid hard. We almost died, but they enjoyed it. And so we did it. Okay. It was Dances and Elsa. That's what we called the concert. Or Dances with Elsa. I can't remember. At any rate, play what your group wants to play. Push them if you want to push them. This would be a great time to see what's coming up, especially with your middle and bottom groups. Just give them stuff that's going to challenge them. Play things with electronics, more contemporary selections. If you've got a grade 3 band, The Cave You Fear by Michael Markowski is a very cool piece to do with them. Alex Shapiro has so many great works that she's written. Paper Cut, the thing with the lights, I can't remember the name of that one, but I mean, she's got some really cool stuff. Daniel Buckvick's got these weird pieces for your advanced group like Voodoo. All this aleatoric stuff that you could try with your groups. Just go nuts. Have fun. Like I said, by this point, you've done the hard work. You're thinking about next year. You're thinking about what the ensemble is going to look like after this year. And so you want to make sure that you are testing the waters, but leave them feeling great about what they do in your class. Leave them feeling great about what you play, about their experience. Still working on those fundamental things. Maybe this is when you start addressing some of the things they said on those LGP recordings. Start working those things into your fundamentals time. Don't stop doing fundamentals because it's the spring. There is never a bad. Now, to be fair, I ramp back the amount of time I spend on fundamentals now. Instead of 20 minutes a day, we probably do 10 to 15 a day. But this is just refinement. And like I said, I've got a couple of things with my concert 1 and 2 that I want to start working on for the rest of the year that we were noted on the LGP judges group tapes. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to continually build and develop our skills so that every year we're starting off further along than we ended, or further along than we started this year. We're further past that now. And that's one of the strengths of my program, I think, is that, we're constantly thinking forward. We're thinking future. We're thinking the 54 seniors that I have this year, somebody's going to have to take those spots. And have we done our teaching on the bottom groups and our less advanced groups to be ready to fill into those spots? I also don't have a problem with ninth graders taking those spots in my top group. If they can play, they can play. I don't care. I do not believe in seniority in any way in that respect at all. I want the best kids. And the number one thing I look at with those ensembles is their tone quality. Because you can teach fingers. You can teach fluency. But if they sound like garbage, then you can't fix that in a group like your advanced groups. They need
Jay,
to build.
Sorry, you make all of your Wind Symphony people re-audition every year, even though they had the chair this past year, doesn't mean that they get it next year, yeah?
Mm-hmm. The way I do my auditions is largely born out of the way. The reason, because I have so many kids, and I know that I'm stupid blessed by that, but I send out all the materials, and we have one afternoon after school where I bring in judges for every group or for every instrument. and they play for those judges, and those judges fill in a Google Doc in real time, and I just hit sort when they're done. And then I don't have the time to listen to my kids audition. And then I'll look, and if there's something that's really like questionable, like I've got a kid that played well enough to be in Wind Symphony, but they've been in ISS 5 times, they're probably not going in Wind Symphony. Sorry. I'm very protective of that group. But that's a way that you can do it. The other thing I love about doing my auditions that way is that there's no way a parent can say that I like their kid more than another kid or didn't like their kid as much. Yeah, that's great. You can think what you want, but I didn't listen to the auditions. I hired an expert on their instrument, and they ranked them, and we moved from there. So,
All right, so what technology, Ishmael wanted to know what was the tech resource you alluded to?
I just use Google Docs. They fill out a Google form with when the judges are judging them, and then I can just go ahead and sort it into an Excel file, and it makes it much faster for me as far as listening to the number of kids that I have in the program. But it's a quick and dirty way to get 300, and then there's no makeup. And I tell them that, if this is important, you'll find a way to be there. Last audition registers by 6:00. And if you don't do the audition, I put you in concert too. Not that they can't be in band, but they just can't be in a particular band if they haven't come to do the work. Now, the only caveat to that is my percussion. All of my percussion go in one class. I have an all percussion class. Audition material specific I can share. Yeah, I'll send you. It's one page. There are 2 etudes on the page. One of them is for everybody, and the second etude you have to play if you're auditioning for symphonic band or wind symphony. And then the chromatic scale, as much of the range of your instrument as you can play. And none of it is from memory. I am a horrible band director because I do not believe in memorization at all. I think it's ridiculous that we ask kids to memorize their scales, because are we testing their fluency or are we testing their ability to memorize? Because those are 2 different skill sets. And I would much rather hear fluency and not worry about memorization. But that's me, and I've been told I'm a bad band director because of that, but they can kiss my butt. I don't care. I'll send them a recording of my Wind Symphony if they have questions. I know that sounds completely arrogant, but I mean, like, seriously, what are we testing these kids on? So, but yeah, I'll send her the Google Drive it's got all of the auditions, and that's the way I put it out on Google Drive. I put it in a Google Drive, and I send that folder out through Remind to all of my kids, and I send it to my middle school directors, because most kids are going to lose the paper anyway. They'd read it off their phone now. So, and I also, actually, you know what? If you're at a computer and can go to it, they're on my band website right now. If you go to hocoband.org, sorry, I'm going to make sure I'm telling you the right. Tina, can I post things in this chat?
Yes, and you can also share your screen.
I don't know how to do that.
I'm like 25% sure you can share your screen. Hang on. Send it to me. Tell me what you'd like to share and I'll do it.
I have it in the chat.
All right. Okay.
That's all of my audition stuff's posted there, if you want to look at it. So as you're looking at that, stop it. I don't care about you. As you look at it, you click on one of the instruments and it pulls up the instructions, all the information they need, and what the etudes are for them to audition for my class. And what I'm trying to do with that, because this does go into the programming, I don't give any real help with this. I'm not looking for it to be perfect, but I want to see what these kids are able to do. But I also don't want to make the first etude so hard that it scares my middle schoolers off. So the first etude is easier, and then my super overachieving middle school kids will do the second ones. And a lot of those kids that are like honor band or region band, they'll make either the second or third band and start growing in that process. Okay, so there you go. Oh, and I can see the chat. Does that help? Is that what you needed to know? All right, we're going to keep plugging through this because I know you guys want to get to your Saturday. Wrong thing. Stop being stupid, Jay. The other thing that I didn't talk about were seasonal concerts. And a lot of that depends on your school. I know several schools in our county. We're a big military town. They do Veterans Day concerts. Veterans High School specifically has to do a Veterans Day concert. That's just, you need to understand your community and understand what's your community expects of you as a director to do those kind of things. As we think about our programming, think about your audience. And I've said this a couple of times already today, but unless your parent was in band, they don't care that you played Hindemith followed by Lincolnshire. They'll walk out of the concert liking the fact that you played the theme from The Mandalorian much more than that. I got a band playing Mandalorian right now. We've got to watch those episodes. We're behind this week. Anyway, yeah, I'm dispensing wisdom here. Calm down. Gosh, what's wrong with you? Yeah, I know. This is me sleeping on the couch for the next week. Throw something at your audience that they can connect to in every concert, and they will love you forever and do anything you need. I am ridiculously spoiled with my band parents, but I make sure that musically I am taking care of them when they come to our concerts by giving them things that they can enjoy as well. They appreciate the difficulty of what my kids do, but they also want to hear, the Christmas song at the Christmas concert. Chestnuts roasting over the open fire. There's that. Wally tells a great story. One year for the Christmas concert, I think he was getting ready to take the band to the Troy Seuss Clinic, and they were doing their pre-concert at their winter concert, and he didn't play Sleigh Ride, and there was like a massive revolt. Like there were letters to the principal. So he ended up doing Sleigh Ride in his spring concert in May, because by God, you're going to play Sleigh Ride some point during the school year. So things that you need to learn and know. Again, experience. So, but there's tons of music that your parents can connect with. Just make sure that you're thinking about that in your programming. Not necessarily LGP. Obviously, there are requirements there, but you've got other concerts that you can think about them and make sure that they, like my parents, are going to lose their mind over Star Wars. I'm ordering Jedi robes. I'm going to conduct in a robe. I have a lightsaber. I'm going to try to get that legion of people who does the cosplay to come in and do pictures in the auditorium, and come up on stage, that kind of stuff. So just, it doesn't always have to be like stupid hard stuff. Have fun. You have to enjoy it too. And my son and I got real lightsabers for Christmas, so this gives me a chance to use one of them. It's kind of awesome. All right, next. I think this is probably one of the most important things that I'm going to share with you guys today is we have got to do a better job as conductors, as directors, about diversifying the kind of music we're programming for our kids. And I'll be really honest with this. Our LGP lists do not do a good job with this. It's a lot of male white guy music on our LGP lists. And to be frank, there's a lot of great music written by a lot of underrepresented populations that we need to be tapping into. One of the things, if you guys, I'm going to be vice president for GMA starting this summer for the next 2 years. I was elected, so if you voted for me, thanks. If you didn't, thanks. Great. But I'm going to push this really hard about taking a hard look at our performance evaluation list and see if we can't do a better job of diversifying what that list looked like. But in the meantime, we can do a better job as conductors diversifying the music that we play. Some websites that I listed here: colorfulmusic.com, Alex Shapiro, andwewereheard.org, and Murphy Music Press are great resources for composers that I promise most of you have never heard of that are writing phenomenal things. Taj Copley for band, Kevin Day, Omar Thomas. We did a piece by Grace Barr Dunlop. Julie Drew's music's amazing. We have got to make sure that we are doing a better job representing on our programming. Kalijah Dunton has some wonderful music. These are composers that you don't know probably. These are composers that you need to know. And I'm sure it's the same way in the choral world. I'm sure it's the same way in elementary music. We have to do a better job of researching music. Our students deserve to play music by people that look like them, that have shared experiences with them. And there's enough great music out there now that we're not sacrificing quality of music to be able to diversify our programming. So I challenge you with that, and I challenge myself with it every time that I program for concerts now, to try to be mindful of that and making sure that we are doing our job to explore all of the options for literature programming, because there's a lot of great music out there that's not getting played because it's just not known. It's never been brought to the forefront of our consciousness and our awareness as conductors that this music even exists. So these websites will give you a place to start looking, and I would like to challenge you with your groups to start diversifying your programming a little bit more. I do it with my concert groups. I do it with the community band that I conduct. All of those things, we need to be intentional and diligent with this, because there are a lot of voices that don't get heard because we're lazy with what we do with our programming. Does that make sense? Everybody cool with that? Okay. I particularly love Kevin Day's music, but his music is hard as crap. Taj Copley has a lot of stuff at various levels, and Omar Thomas is the goat, but his music is impossible to play. We we bought a piece of his for Wind Symphony to do it at GMA. We spent about a month on it, and we had to take it back up. It was just, I mean, they can play, but dang, it's hard. All right, any questions about that stuff? These are all things that as a conductor and an instructor that you've got to be thinking about, and it's a lot. It's a lot that we have to consider as we look at our ensembles and the kids that we teach and the people that are in front of us. Small band versus improperly placed comma, large band. Small bands present more challenges. And I've lived with those challenges, like I said, teaching the private school. But this is where there are other things that you can do to make small band work. Flex band arrangements, those came out of COVID. Um, I don't know that flex band is necessarily what you want to do for LGPE, but it does give you a lot more music choices if your ensemble is still recovering post COVID, as far as like what you can program. Um, Ishmael, talk to me a little bit about chorus. Do you guys have? Um, I mean, most of your things are 4 to 8 parts max, right?
Uh, well, it just depends on what it depends on the voicing of your choir. We
Mhm.
do have pieces that are 2 part, pieces that are TTB, pieces that are SAB or SATB, Divisi. It just depends, I guess, on your program and
So,
what you.
so I think chorus has done a better job with this for a much longer than band has, as having, like you said, you've got 2 part, you've got 3 part, you've got 4 part, and you just have to decide what your ensemble's best
Yeah,
suited to do, right?
yeah,
That wasn't always the case on the band side. And so these flex arrangements for us, I guess for you guys, flex arrangements would be doing a 3 voice instead of a 4 voice if that's what your vocal balance requires.
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Are there, let me ask the question this way from the choral side. Are there more advanced difficulty pieces that are only for 3 parts or 2 parts? Or do you find that that's typically easy music versus harder music?
I still think that's for 2 part. It's easier. I don't think when you were to go as class A, you will find any 2 part.
Okay,
Uh,
that was my question.
yeah,
Because some of our grade 5 stuff has been written for flex band. And basically the way they write flex band music is it's a soprano, alto, tenor, and bass part. They
hmm,
write it in 4 parts, and you just kind of fit your instrumentation to what you have to make sure the parts are covered. So I was curious about that because I didn't know if Class A had any 2 part Class A stuff,
oh
or
no, I haven't seen it. Now I can go look now and see, but I don't know.
I was just curious. It was just something that I've never asked that question before, and you're my sitting here resident choral expert, so I thought I'd ask. But that's for band. It's the flex arrangements. Being able to do that again, like we talked about, rewriting parts. Know your transpositions. If you're a band person, know that saxophones or altos are in E flat. Make sure that you understand what those transpositions mean. This is a pet peeve of mine. Hello, we have someone joining us. Good morning or good afternoon. Um, understand what instruments make great substitutions for parts that you may have that are missing. For example, muted trumpet should never, ever, ever be used as an oboe. Ever. I have a degree in trumpet. We don't sound like an oboe. A saxophone is a much better match timbrely, or a clarinet, or a flute, or basically anything that's not a brass instrument would work for oboe. Okay, so you have to kind of think about those things, and make those choices if you have to rewrite parts. Okay, um, sometimes large groups have instrumentation issues. Like I told you guys, those Fillmore marches with the crazy high clarinet stuff, I rewrite those even with my wind symphony, like the horns versus trombone thing we talked about. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you just have to rewrite to make your ensemble sound good. You know, maybe that's one of those sections in your group that doesn't have as strong a player in it, and so you have to reinforce those things. On the choral side, do you guys do any rewriting like that? Do you ever have a soprano singing an alto part, or an alto singing a tenor part, or just to cover certain chordal parts?
So I have a question when you ask that, because I will have a soprano maybe singing a tenor part, or also maybe covering a bass part at times, but I don't physically rewrite it.
Mm-hmm.
If that,
do you think you don't rewrite it because they can see all of the parts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you guys required to like transcribe it out?
No, but I mean, most of the time it has to do with the fact that instruments transpose differently.
Yeah.
So you can't hand a saxophone a trumpet part because they're in two different keys. And so you'd have to rewrite the part so they could read it. So like if I wanted a trumpet player to cover an alto sax part, I'm going to have to transpose that E flat part for a B flat instrument. And that's why I say rewrites, because most of the time, now what I try to do is find instruments that can cover that I don't have to rewrite, because I don't have time to. So like if it's a part that's in C, I'm going to try to find a C instrument to cover it. If it's a part that's in B flat, I'll try to make those changes so that I don't have to spend time sitting in a computer writing parts out. I do think that's an advantage with chorus. Like my son's girlfriend is actually a tenor in her voice range. Like that's just where she's comfortable. So she sings tenor. And that reinforces that tenor voice and that kind of stuff. So it's good to know that choirs, you guys do the same thing. If you just do what you have to do to make your group sound good. And most time the judge is not going to notice. And most time the judge is going to applaud the fact that the balance is better because they can hear all the parts, regardless if it's band or choir or whatever. So
and I have to often because I have like 30 altos versus and 5 tenors. So yeah,
you get those second altos that can sing lower than,
and they love to sing tenor.
Oh yeah, I know. My daughter's a second alto. She knows. I know. But like to be fair, Tina sings lower than I do, and I sing higher than she does. But she's a mezzo, and I used to be a tenor in a former life. But we'll talk about that some other time. All right. So again, rewrites have to happen regardless of your program size. Do whatever you have to do to make your band sound good, to make your chorus sound good. Just make sure if you do some like with the solos specifically, if you have a wholesale like a soprano sax or a clarinet covering an oboe, you need to notate that for the judges. But if it's not an LGP concert, just do it. Do whatever you want. But even with those spring concerts and fall concerts and winter concerts, your groups have to sound good, because YouTube's a real thing. People are going to post stuff and everybody's going to go, well, Jay's band didn't sound so good. Well, Jay didn't do his work and didn't do the rewrites like he should have, or whatever, because it's going to get out there no matter what. Parents don't care about copyright. They care that their baby just played, and they're going to put, the worst sounding piece you've ever played in your life on YouTube instead of the 17 that sounded great, because that's what's going to happen. It's the way it always happens. Sometimes you have to play a different piece at a different time. We talked about this a little earlier with October and me doing it 3 years in a row until I had a group that could do it. Don't be afraid to pull a piece. And your kids they're going to argue with you about it. But you have to remember that you're the expert in the room, and you have to make sure they understand that you are making the best choices for them musically at the time. You know, my wind symphony is the worst because they're like super band nerds. They're listening to all this stuff on YouTube, and like, hey, can we play this? Can we play this? And I'm like, I'd love to, but our horns are not that good. But I can't say that out loud, and so I have to come up with creative ways to deflect that. But ultimately, your group sounds good or sounds bad because of you. My mentor was a guy named Jeffrey Rouser, and if you know Rouser, he's like one of the most incredible human beings on earth. I was fortunate enough to student teach with him. And he looked at me one day. I was like, we were just talking band while I was student. He said, "Look, Jay, here's the fact. There's no such thing as a bad band. There's just bad band directors. Kids are going to do what they're taught. And so it's a huge responsibility for us to make sure that we're giving them those things to be successful. And if that means pulling a piece because your kids aren't ready for it, applaud yourself for giving them the chance. And sometimes they'll surprise you. Sometimes you'll pass out a piece and they're like, no way. They're like, we can do this. And then they read it and you're like, oh, crap. We can do this. And then you work on it for 2 weeks and realize, crap, we can't do this. Then you still have to take it back up. But at least give them the chance to try. But at the end of the day, you have to make the decision and be the professional in the room. And if they're not ready for it, they're just not ready for it. Okay. And sometimes you learn more from those failures than from success. But part of the reason you're here with me today is so hopefully that my failures can lead to your success and that you don't have to deal with some of the stuff that I've lived through. So the end of it all, always make sure your band has a positive concert experience, whether it's your fall concert, your winter concert, LGP, spring concert. You want kids to stay in the program. So you have to be thinking about their experience and what they get from being in your program. And is it a positive one? And if it's not positive, you have to address fundamentally why they didn't enjoy that experience. Was it your programming? Was it the way that you approached the teaching to it? Were you short and angry with them all the time when they made a mistake? Or were you caring and understanding and understand that they just need to continue to grow? And those are things we have to think about. Probably the most important thing we do is making sure that these kids are having a positive experience. And everything I've talked about today leads to that, leads to them having that positive experience because we've done the work as professionals that we need to do to make sure that they do have that experience. All right. I don't want to talk about marching band a lot, but I think it bears chatting about a little bit as far as programming. With marching bands, you want to think, first of all, what is your goal? Are you competitive? Are you entertainment? Or are you trying to be a little bit of both? And I think that you have to structure your shows around that. I think there are certainly boxes that have to be checked in the competitive marching world, from general effect to musical effect to visual effect to all of those things. What I teach my band, I approach marching band programming in two ways. I either approach it from the visual side first. I have an idea visually that I want to do, and then I find the music that matches that visual concept, or I have musical ideas that I want to do, and then I work the visual concept to match the musical idea. There's no right answer to this. What I will say as far as musical programming, make sure that if you've got, because your marching band is going to have kids from every concert level that you have. So if you've got a grade 6 group, a grade 4 group, and a grade 2 group marching on the field, program at the upper end of grade 3, the lower end of grade 4. And then maybe have some solos in there that your grade 6 kids could take care of, or small ensembles that your grade 6 can do. Because the worst is to work 3 months on music that your lower kids can never, ever play. There's also some composers that will write their shows with alternate parts that are simplified. I highly suggest those. If you want to go a little bit harder music, have that simplified part taken care of there. You can get prepackaged shows. You can buy stock charts. You can do custom shows. My show for next year is a custom show. My friend Scott at Stars Mill High School is writing my music book for me. But yesterday he sent me back the message that says it's going to cost $1,000 to get copyright permissions for the tunes that we want to use. And so that's another added expense that you don't have with just buying stuff all JW Pepper. Though I will say we bought a boxed show last year that had everything, and we still had to get some performance rights. We did part of my show last year was Angels in the Architecture by Frank Kelly. So I had to get performance rights for that. And then we had some Evanescence in the middle of it, and I had to get performance rights for that. The closer was Elsa, so that was public domain, so I didn't have to worry about that. But just keep that in mind as you're looking at your shows, but don't get caught. Again, somebody's going to put this crap on YouTube, and those people out there, the copyright police, they are looking all the time to try to find a ways to get that money back. So just go ahead and take care of it on the front end so that you don't have to deal with the hassle on the back end. Concept of sound in marching band. I try to subscribe to the concert band with moving feet. My marching bands have very warm symphonic sounds, but they also know that when we need that extra gear, that they can absolutely knock a wall down because we're pushing the breathing fundamentals, the tone production, the embouchure development, all of that stuff still factors in even with marching band. And we start that in early July. Some of that's going to come from what music, the arrangements you use, and how you approach that. But all music can teach concepts, regardless if it's marching, if it's choir, like the difference between show choirs and concert choirs and gospel choirs. All of those things can teach conceptual things well. Tone is tone. Balance is balance. Diction is diction. Articulation is articulation. It's your approach as a director and what your expectation is that's going to make the difference for your students. And so for me, with my marching bands, my approach is that we move our feet, but we need to sound as concert band as possible. Because I don't want to have two different sounds to have to work through and wash out that marching sound when I'm in the classroom. I just want us to sound like a band, and I want it to be a good band. And then when we put that gas to it, they have the strength here to be able to do that without losing or sacrificing tone quality. It's just turning the slider up on the board. Okay, we're at a 7. Let's push it to 10 this time. And they're able to do that because those fundamentals are in place. All right, last thing. Are we getting close to the end? Yeah, last thing, resources. Where can I find all this music at? Your state lists for GMEA, but don't just look at GMEA. Look at Texas list. Look at Florida list. Look at those states that have great programs for what you do. Check out what some of their music is. What you're going to find, at least on the band side, is that we overinflate the difficulty of our music compared to other states. What's a 4 in Texas is typically on our 6 list. Okay, with some exceptions, but I mean, a lot of it is just inflated. JW Pepper, I love Pepper because they have score images, they have recordings. They've really done a lot of work to help educators out as far as making sure that we have resources to spend our money with them. It's basically what it amounts to. So YouTube, probably the greatest single resource for music educators that has ever come. The good, the bad, and the ugly. You will see it all. You will listen to it all, but it's always a good first place to go as a reference. And again, like I said earlier, you want to get your ears attuned to what kids your age are actually doing. Those good ensembles that play grade 4, those good ensembles that play grade 6, those good class A singing ensembles or class B or whatever, you want to hear what those good high school groups are doing. Midwest programs, if you're band or orchestra, go to Midwest and listen to those groups play. A lot of that music has to be written in the last 10 years. So it's going to be a lot of options for new music. They have very specific things. And they also, when you perform at Midwest, you have to play something off every grade level. You have to do a grade 1, a grade 2, a grade 3, a grade 4, a grade 5, and a grade 6 as part of that program. So you're going to hear lots of great music from all levels. Even when Tina and I performed at Midwest with Terrawinds back in 2015, and we played this really wonderful grade 1 Christmas tune because it was in December and it was beautiful, but it was just part of the process. So it exposes the people who are there. Go to your GMEA performances, go to your district festival, grab a program, go listen to other groups in your district, as many as you can, and just put stars by the pieces that you like. When I was judging, I judged District 5, the North Atlanta schools a few weeks ago, and I have the program on my desk that's got stars by like 15 pieces that I loved that I had never heard before. So another way to do your research and support the people that are your colleagues in your district. Go sit in the back of the room. That's one of the things that disappoints me about District 11 is that there are so few people who are listening to other people's bands. You know, when I was a young band director, I mean, I would take a day off of work and just go sit in the back of the hall at LGPE because I wanted to know, I wanted to learn, and it's worth it. It's worth burning a personal day for that professional. You know, the professional development we get is crap. You know, I don't care anything about map testing scores or English, but like taking that day off, I know I'm going to hell for saying that stuff, but it's true. They hired me to teach band. That's what I want to do. So I'm going to take that time and find the best professional development for me, which is hearing good bands play well.
And on the other side of that, there's no substitute for coming off the steps, off the stage, and your peers are shaking your hand and telling you what a good job you did.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, go to your GMA things and get those LGPE programs and go to the conference performances. Hear what the absolute, presumably best in your state at what they do is doing. Winrep.org. It's a great website with great resource with information. Stanton's music listening library is great. The Texas UIL list for chorus and band are really, really fine resources. And then they've got the rehearsing the band books, you know what I'm talking about, teaching through performance or whatever. A lot of good stuff. The problem I have with the teaching band books is going back to the diversifying our lit. There's no diversity in those. They're looking at pieces that were written by people that look like me. And so that's the only drawback right now is that a lot of the new stuff is not getting into those books yet. But any questions about resources? You guys familiar with most of this stuff? You're like, please stop talking so I can go away. I got it. Last thing, colleagues. Talk to people who know more than you do. That is the best way to grow, the best way to learn. And not only ask their advice, but by God, take their advice and at least try it. It may not work in your group. I'm thinking of 2 directors in my district, and they're about the same point in their career. They have 2 very similar programs. They both ask questions of those of us who've been doing this a while. And one of them's band is improving rapidly because he takes the advice we give and he uses it, and his program is blowing up. And the other one listens and says, sure, and doesn't do any of it. And his program is struggling. We're not giving this information out because we think we're smarter. It's because we've made these mistakes and we're trying to help people not make these mistakes anymore. And that's what when I talk to young directors or old directors or anybody that wants to listen to my voice, like I said, this is just what's worked for me. I drive my wife crazy because I do not assess my bands at all. We don't do playing tests. We don't do graded assignments. We don't do any of it.
He doesn't write it down. He assesses, he knows.
Is this my presentation? Yeah, mute.
It's mine.
But literally, my kids get 20 points a day for 100 points a week. And if you sit down, shut up, and play your instrument, that's how I grade my band. And I know I'm going to hell for it, but it works for me. And my bands play well. And I don't care about grading playing tests and all that crap. I'm in this band director group on Facebook for like band directors all over the country. And I just keep reading their stuff and I'm just like, I'm so glad I'm not in your band. I would hate it and I would want to quit because of all this. Like they get excited about punishing kids for things that kids can't control. This kid missed a concert because their parents took them to Australia for a month. Yeah, bring me a t-shirt back, dude. Have fun. My concert is just not that important. And so sometimes we got to keep perspective on those things. But like I said, my wife thinks I'm an idiot because I don't grade, but whatever. But pick people's brains that you trust. Lots of experience that can be shared, mistakes, good things. Hey, I'm thinking about playing this piece. I'm thinking about singing this piece. Well, do you have this? No, well, then don't do that piece. We've been there. We've done it. We've lived those questions, and we just don't want you guys to make those same mistakes that we have made. On the band side, there's an organization called Phi Beta Mu. It is an international bandmasters fraternity, which has like the top 1% of band directors in the world in it. They have a mentoring project. If you need a mentor, look up Phi Beta Mu and check them out because they would be happy to help you with that. I am very honored to be a member of that group. And so if you need to get hooked up with somebody that can help mentor you for those things, I would be happy to do that. And like I said at the outset, retired band directors love to talk about band. Befriend them. I'm sure choral directors are the same way. Befriend those people. Get them into your room. Buy them lunch and talk shop. Take them out for a beverage and talk shop. And do it often. Make them an ally for you and your program. Make them someone that you can have on your speed dial that goes, hey, I'm thinking about playing Lincolnshire. Well, that's a bad idea. Great. Thanks for sharing. I'll talk to you later. You want somebody that's going to be able to tell you the truth, but you don't get to that level of trust if you haven't done the work to build those relationships with those people. So build those relationships. Find those people that can help you with your groups that you trust implicitly. And they come in your room and they say, hey, that doesn't sound good. Well, why doesn't it sound good? Here's why. Okay, well, I'm going to fix that because I trust you to tell me what's wrong with my band. And you have to decide who those people are. But lastly, I was fortunate enough when I was in college to play. We had a guest soloist named Byron Stripling come play with the Georgia College Band when I was in college. And I got to drive from Milledgeville to Atlanta and pick him up from the airport and drive him all the way back to Milledgeville. We had this really great conversation. And back then, I had one of those big 4x4 Case Logic holds 100 CD books. That's how old I am. Yeah, right. So, and he took my book and he was going through it, and like it was a lot of jazz because I was really jazz focused back then. And he would look and he's like, this is great, this is great, this is crap. Don't ever listen to this again. And he was blowing away people that he's played with, that I know he's played with. Anyway. So what he taught me that day was that your car is like your own private university. When you're in your car, listen to recordings of your groups as you prepare. Listen to recordings of groups that you want to sound like. I have a playlist in my Apple Music that has 82 hours of concert band music, and I add to it constantly. 82 hours. That's a lot of concert band music. Okay, and I'll just turn it on when I'm looking for a piece to program. I played the piece Vulcan at GMEA because I found it on that concert band list, and it was exactly what I was looking for. Take the time to use the resources you have. So that's it, guys. I've talked way longer than I meant to, but like I said, I'm passionate about this stuff.
And thank you, Mr. Davis.
That it helped. So thank you guys for sharing your Saturday with me. I really appreciate you being here.
And one thing that I did as a band director to piggyback off the last thing he did was I used the voice recorder on my phone to record my groups, like not necessarily daily, but definitely weekly. And it's not the greatest quality recording because it's a voice recorder on your phone, but it will give you the idea of where your group actually is without you standing up looking for behavior problems and, doing all the things that you do actively monitoring as a teacher.
I just put something in the chat. Shure makes a condenser mic, an MV88 mic that plugs into the lightning port on your iPhone. And it's a high quality mic that I use all the time in my band room. And it's about this big. It's in a little case, and it's just a condenser mic that plugs into your iPhone or your iPad. And it makes recording quality much better, but you don't have to have anything else for it. No cords, no cables, none of that crap. So check that out if you get a chance. It's about $150, but well worth it.
Well, thank you so much. And thank y'all for coming. And thank you, Mr. Davis, for your expertise. And we will see you next weekend for Dr. Allen's Woodwind Refresher.
You guys have a great Saturday. Y'all take care.
Maybe.